Matthew's Gospel, Jesus is inviting us to be yoked to him. A yoke. It is that thing that joins two together to balance and direct the workload. Usually made out of wood, it is placed on the shoulders of working animals, oxen, horses, and mules. It helps them learn to work together, to carry a load. Yoked, the two share the burden. And the more experienced one teaches the lesser. Sounds a bit torturous to me. So how can a yoke be a good thing? I had a memorable experience with a yoke on my wedding day. Mark and I had planned this grand and glorious entrance to our wedding reception. We were to ride in on a horse-drawn carriage complete with two horses yoked together. Technically, it was probably a carriage horse harness rather than an official yoke holding them together, but you get the idea. Mark and I were in the carriage, me in my white wedding dress, and he in his wool, dress blue marine uniform. It was late May in South Texas. We had just begun our trek, like our marriage, moving ahead about 20 yards in the carriage, when one of the horses, presumably the younger, less experienced one, bolted. The horse wanted to have no part of that harness, no part of that burden, no part of that work. The harness broke. Here's the difference between a yoke, which is much stronger and more powerful, would take a great resistance to break. But with that bolting horse, the carriage was rocking and the driver was losing control. Then Mark looked at me and said, "Jump." My initial response was, "Are you crazy? I am in a long wedding dress with high heels, and you want me to jump out of a moving horse carriage. I will probably trip on my way out, fall under the wheels to my death, and there will be our marriage, or at best sprain my ankle on the landing." Mark knew I was an independent and rebellious one, like that young horse, and not particularly good at following, especially following orders or directions from someone else. He looked at me again and said, "Jump." Here was our moment of being yoked, officially united and tied together in marriage. Do I resist or accept the yoke? I felt I was free to choose. Would he have pushed me? Fortunately, it didn't come to that. I thought about it for a minute, and then we jumped, landing injury-free. Jesus says, "Come to me, all ye that are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For the yoke is easy, and my burden is light." What is this yoke of Jesus, and how can it be easy and make our burdens lighter? That image of a yoke comes to Matthew from the Old Testament and Jewish teachings. In one way, the yoke is literally the symbol of bondage and servitude. For many, this yoke has been a real and painful history of enslavement and abuse. But from the beginning, God makes clear that people are not meant to be yoked that way, oppressed and enslaved. In Exodus, God frees the people of Israel when God breaks the band of the yoke, the bondage of enslavement from Egypt. And God makes the people free, upright, and on their own. Then with Moses, God gives the people a different kind of yoke with the giving of the law and the commandments. And unlike the yoke of bondage, this yoke is about learning to love and to follow God's commandments. The hope is that the blessing and delight will be found there, found in the following, like a parent's loving guidance. Like a parent's loving guidance, this kind of yoke can comfort a child when confronted with decisions that she is not ready to make on her own. Similar to the shepherd's staff, this yoke of the commandments pushes and pulls, providing directions and guidance. We enter Matthew now today reading where a problem has come about with this yoke. It is being exposed. The yoke of the law is being misrepresented by some, and some are claiming power from it. And the people are confused. People are uncertain who to follow. They don't know right from wrong. Some complain John the Baptist is too strict and frugal. He is going too far. And others say Jesus is not serious enough. He is too free and easy. Once again, eating and cavorting with tax collectors and sinners. To these confused folk, Jesus says, turn your attention to another yoke, not the yoke of the law, but the yoke of wisdom. Here in Matthew, Jesus connects himself with that other deep tradition of wisdom literature, like the book of Job, the Psalms, and the Proverbs. These books of wisdom reveal God's wisdom and incite our wonder. In wisdom, God calls us deeper to that place of wonder, not limited by the law, by our own knowledge, by our own understandings. As God put it to Job, where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? If the yoke of the law provides boundaries, the yoke of wisdom loosens. Wisdom is not enslaving, it is expansive and liberating. Wisdom explores the known and the unknown, like an infant child, like that mind of Christ, that Christ keeps pointing us to, that mind of a child. Wisdom leads to wonder. Like when we sit on our back porches in the summer counting fireflies. The wise sage reaches out, learning from other cultures, crossing ethnic, racial, religious, and other boundaries and divides. Wisdom is of God, and she is often personified as a woman. The Greeks had their own name for her. It was Sophia. Here in Matthew, Jesus connects himself with that divine wisdom, the Word of God, the Hagia Sophia, the holy wisdom. And what does this wisdom look like? Jesus says she will be vindicated. She will be shown to be right and true by her deeds. In other words, the proof is in the pudding. Look to Jesus. See the things that he has done, the healing, the caring for the poor, those beatitude blessings, that self-giving love. Look here, look there, and you will see the Father, and you will see wisdom. Jesus is the embodiment of holy wisdom. The same man embodies divine love and embodies divine wisdom, which is feminine. And this yoke of wisdom, this yoke of Jesus is not judgmental or condescending. It's gentle and humble. This yoke brings us a sense of purpose. It connects us to who we are deep inside, who we are called to be, like when a teacher knows she is meant to teach, a preacher is meant to preach. A farmer is meant to farm. And oddly, in this time of pandemic, many of us are feeling unyoked, disconnected from that purpose. And it is this unyoking that is bringing burdens and travails. And yet, Jesus continually calls us, come, take my yoke, and learn from me. I will give you rest. I will loosen those old burdens and show you a new way. I have to say, if I've learned anything in these last few months, it is the yoke of Jesus is not only wise, it is also adaptive, leading another foolish generation into new ways of seeing and understanding God's way of love. And on this 4th of July weekend, let us thank God for another yoke that has been put upon us as citizens of this nation. It is the yoke of liberty. Liberty is more like a man-made yoke that helps us understand that freedom that is from God, that inalienable right. This yoke is part of who this country is. It has welcomed people onto our shores in the words at the base of the Statue of Liberty. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. And in the beginning, the founding fathers prioritized this yoke of liberty. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Here's the thing. Liberty is invariably yoked to another. Liberty is not unilateral or one-sided. One person's liberty consistently touches and affects another. We have seen that recently here in Richmond. One person's liberty to keep symbolic statues and names is pushing and pulling against another person's liberty to have those symbols removed. One person's liberty not to wear a mask is pushing and pulling against another person's liberty to be free from the potential threat of disease. The yoke of liberty is not always easy, gentle, or light. It tries us as we feel it pushing and pulling. That is why in these trying times, it would be wise to don that other yoke, that yoke of Jesus, the one that is wise and full of compassion, the yoke of Jesus that is leading us to follow a way of learning, of listening, of loving, and of loosening. A yoke that has been revealed in the glory of the cross and not in some other temporal or past glory. And when we jump, when we accept this yoke, truly the burdens of our days will become a bit easier to bear. And we will find rest for our souls.